The first word we learn in a classroom. We're learning Hungarian. Our teacher comes to the board, she writes fényképezőgép is the Hungarian word for camera. And then she writes 39 other words on the board, says this will be your vocabulary for the week. You'll have a quiz at the end of the week. The second word we learn quite differently. You are on an adventure with your best friend. You're in Scandinavia. You find yourselves in an old bar. There are around 6 grizzled old patrons. You sit at the bar, and the barkeep, he is definitely a Viking. He has a giant red beard, and he's smiling at you in a very disturbing manner as he puts out 3 shot glasses and pulls out a bottle, and on the bottle you see written M-O-K-T-O-R as the barkeep says, Moktor, and starts pouring something into these shot glasses, and it's a sort of green liquid, but not a nice emerald green liquid. It's a kind of brownish, yellowish, viscous green liquid. And he puts the bottle away, and he pulls out a white jar, and in the white jar he starts spooning out something into each of your shot glasses, and from the scent you realize this is definitely rotting fish as he repeats, Moktor, and all the patrons now are turning and looking at you and laughing. The barkeep now pulls out a match, he lights it, he lights the 3 shot glasses on fire, and he repeats, Moktor, as all of the patrons now start chanting, Moktor, 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 and your friend, your stupid friend, he picks up his shot glass, and he shouts, Moktor, and he blows it out and he drinks it. And you pick up your glass, Moktor, and you blow it out, Moktor, and you scream, Moktor, and you drink it. And it's the worst thing you've ever had in your life. And you will remember the word Moktor forever, where you have already forgotten the Hungarian word for camera. Why? Memories are fascinating things. They're not stored in any particular location in your brain. They're actually stored in the connections between regions of your brain. When you saw that glass, you saw the bottle and it said M-O-K-T-O-R, and the barkeep said Moktor, that sound and that spelling, they interconnected. They formed a memory. Those connections connected to other sounds, the sound of Moktor getting poured into those shot glasses, the sound of everyone chanting in the room, Moktor, Moktor, all of those sounds and that spelling, they interconnected, and they also connected to images. They connected to images of this green bottle. They connected to the shot glasses. They connected to this decaying fish. They connected to the face of that barkeep, that Viking face. That is a part of that word now. And those in turn connect to sensory experiences like that awful taste in your mouth, the smell of burning, decaying fish, the heat of the fire. Those connect to emotional content, to disgust, to anger at your friend, to excitement. They connect to your journey. They connect to what is alcohol, what is Scandinavia, what is friendship, what is adventure. All of these things are now a part of this word, and they make it so that that word is going to stick with you. Where the Hungarian word for camera, well, you don't even remember what it sounds like. This non-memory isn't associated with iPhone cameras and SLR cameras and the sound of a shutter and the feelings you get when you look at photos from your past. So what can you do with this? Well, let's return to where I was with French. My situation was as follows. I was taking 2 master's degrees, one in song, one in opera, and so I had 6 days of class a week. My only free time was an hour a day on the subway, Sundays, and Austrian national holidays, of which, thankfully, there were many. And during that time, I did one thing. I built and reviewed flashcards in one of these computerized spaced repetition systems. But instead of using translations on those flashcards, I began with pictures. If I wanted to learn the French word for dog, chien, then I would search on Google Images for chien, and I would find that French bloggers didn't choose the dogs I would expect. Their dogs were smaller and cuter and somehow more French. And so I used these dogs to learn chien and built a vocabulary out of these pictures from French bloggers. And as I built that vocabulary, I graduated over to sentences. And I started learning abstract words and grammar that way, using fill-in-the-blank sentences. If I wanted to learn a word like went is the past tense of to go, I would use a story. Yesterday, I blank to school with a picture of a schoolhouse. And so I learned my abstract grammar in that way. And then 3 months later, I had that interview. And I found myself in this room with this French person who began our conversation with bonjour. And then the first thing that came to my mind was, bonjour. And she started speaking to me in French, and I realized I understood what she was saying. And what's more, I knew what to say back. And it wasn't fluent, it was a bit stunted, but this was the first time I had spoken French in my life, and I was speaking in French, and I was thinking in French, and we had a 15-minute conversation, and at the end of this conversation, the teacher tells me, you know, there's something wrong with your placement test. It says you should be in the intermediate level, but we're placing you in the advanced level. And so over the next 7 weeks, I read 10 books, I wrote 70 pages of essays, and by the end of that summer, I was fully fluent in French.